Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
Hello, Stu. How are you doing?
Hi Lorraine, I'm very well. You okay?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks, Stu.
Good.
So the financial reporter picked up on something that caught my eye that I thought our conveyancing colleagues might be interested to think about. And their headline, and I quote from the financial reporter here, just 13% of first-time buyers fully understand the home buying process, according to new research from Lloyds. Apparently, Lloyds carried out a survey of 2,000 people planning to buy their first home. And I think one of the most interesting statements to start off with, Stu, is only 13% said they fully understand the home buying process. Does any client really, particularly a first-time buyer?
Well, I think the very first sort of bone to pick in this statement is, when did they ask the client? Had they engaged lawyers at that point, or were they just looking to buy a property? Because, as you say, if they were just looking to buy a property, well, then they wouldn't understand the process, would they? Obviously, if they were already buying a property, then it may be a slightly different matter. And of course, we discussed, before we came on air, lots of law firms now give lots of different types of literature to clients when they engage. And I think a lot of that is very good and does explain the process. But this is legal due diligence, isn't it? This is not something necessarily that a client is going to understand back to front. Certainly one that's doing it for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I would take issue with the point fully understand the home buying process.
Yeah.
I mean, from our perspective as conveyancing lawyers, does any client fully understand it?
That's why, to a degree, they've got us, isn't it?
Yes.
To help them and explain them and help them through the process.
Exactly. And I do wonder about the questions asked, because I mean, an interesting quote was the legal, and I quote again from Financial Reporter here, the legal process was identified as being the biggest concern, with 29% of respondents saying they were most worried about conveyancing and land registry procedures. Well, I do wonder about the questions that were asked, because what on earth do first-time buyers understand about land registry procedures? And and as you say, tied up in that is, do they understand our process at all? Because at the end of the day, that's very much down to the law, the professional, regulated, insured to the hilt law firm to sort of get right and deal with, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and don't forget, clients will often get served lots of literature during a conveyancing process. How much of that they actually read, let alone understand, is another point to the argument. So I'd suggest that a large proportion of the advice we even give a client, that they'll probably skirt through. Whether they're that bothered, if you're advising a client how long things take after completion to register their ownership, probably suggest not.
Yeah, I agree, Stu.
Certainly for first-time buyers as well. I'm not sure if you were to include what we do, for example, a paragraph about registration after completion, saying how long things take, delays at the land registry, etc., etc. Would you expect a client to fully comprehend the importance of that at the point upon which they're discussing mortgages, what's been left and taken in terms of furniture of the property? These kind of interesting things as opposed to registration at the land registry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think that most conveyancers watching this, as you say, Stu, they will have information on their websites. They will have sort of flow charts. They will have a lot of information out there for clients. And I do agree. And over the years, you see time and time again, however much information you send to clients and provide to them, in frankly, whatever format you provide it, loads of law firms will have videos and all sorts on their websites. Now, I know that PCS does.
Yeah, I have to admit, videos do seem to make a difference. I would say there's a quantifiable difference between advising a client or giving a client information via a video as opposed to a lengthy document email. I have to admit, since we've adopted that, that's been very well received. However, just going back again to, discuss the information that's out there, I've always said, whilst there's definitely ways that the conveyancing process can be improved, one of the things I would love to see is more educational pieces by our sort of regulatory bodies, by the bodies that serve us in terms of telling clients this is how long things should take, this is what the process is all about. It's important, it's legal due diligence, it's not something that will take 5 minutes, because often I think clients get contradictory information where other parties, not conveyancers, are maybe thrusting products, problems into the conveyancing press. And if clients were to Google things like that, they can see, people writing about silver bullets, which are going to make things go twice as fast, etc. When we all know that may well not be the case. Couple that with potentially estate agents giving advice, which may contradict what we advise. I think what a client sees is very difficult, and I think if whether it be CLC, SRA, anybody basically out there that's in these sort of higher positions was to sort of publish this conveyancing process, but actually expectation wise advise people it takes a long time. For example, it takes 12 weeks as at least. Then it gives law firms not only literature they give the client, but if the client challenges, you can say, well, look, go to this, governing body's website. You can actually see on there, it tells you roughly how long things take. I know you've been told by an estate agent that you might be completing next month, but, we can't say that because of this. It's not just us, look around. And I think there's not enough information out there generally to help a client. I think actually the information out there, if you were a lay client that was just to go on Google, is probably contradictory. And that, I think, sometimes leads to the problem.
Yeah, I think so. And what I also think about this, particularly time frame, and a very interesting point here in this piece of research by Lloyds, of course, and they've got their own angle. But, despite these challenges, most aspiring homeowners said they plan to seek advice before buying. And I thought, hey, fantastic. We all want people to instruct their lawyer early. But then it went on to say, nearly 65% intend to speak to a lender or mortgage broker for guidance.
Yeah.
Albeit 1 in 5 said they didn't plan to get any advice at all.
And this is where this is that sort of break, if you like, isn't it? We all want to work together, brokers, agents, lawyers. But at the point upon which the client may seek guidance, whether it's from an estate agent or a mortgage broker, whether it's getting a mortgage, selling a property, that agent or that broker has to sell their services. And they're unlikely to probably break the bad news that this could take 3 or 4 months, I think.
Well, also, you've picked up on a very common theme that I come across and I sort of propound, particularly in my teaching, particularly when I'm teaching people how to do the job, and aspiring lawyers and actual lawyers for that matter. The bottom line is that nobody likes to get bad news.
No.
And it's perceived that the conveyancer is giving bad news. And the thing, because there's perhaps going to be a delay, but
yeah,
we don't want to give bad news because that's, that's exciting for us. We want, because we're being paid to find out these things. So if a property hasn't got a right of access, if there is a problem with the title, whatever the issue is, if there's something imposed by a lender, it's us that's got to deal with it. And I often find the attitude of the lenders hugely disingenuous as a result, quite frankly. But clients don't want to be given bad news, and quite often it's us doing it. And of course, the big irony is that you and I have talked about before, Stu. If you have a conveyancer that's giving a client bad news, i.e. perhaps the matter's going to be a bit delayed because we've got to do these things because there are these problems, that means we're doing our job.
I know.
That's what really gets up my nose. We're doing our job. We're doing the due diligence that you talk about every time you and I meet.
But this goes back, though, that our job isn't explained, I don't think, properly, publicly. Yes, we may internally as law firms explain what we do to our clients, but I bet you anybody watching this now, if you were to go on Google after, there will be a plethora of information out there about the buying and selling process, but the one thing that everybody will skirt over will be literally what we actually do, the conveyancing, the legal due diligence, checking that something's actually going to be okay for the purpose of lending, for the purpose of buying, for the purpose of registering, and ultimately then selling. And that part of it is so diluted in lukewarm, as opposed to, use this process, do this, you'll complete in 6 weeks, la 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 la, modern auctions, this. There'll be loads of things that, I think will confuse a client.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe the takeaway from this is that, if our regulators and professional bodies aren't going to step up to the extent that we might hope, again, it falls to firms to try to continue that education piece, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, from a regulator's point of view, they will argue that they're not here to market law firms; they're here to regulate them. So I completely get that point.
Well, yeah, but the irony is, Stu, if they cease to have a function if there aren't any law firms to regulate, mate.
Yeah, you just stole my thunder. As
Sorry.
always, you just stole my thunder. But yeah, no, completely agree. And this is where I think again and again and again and again and again, we as a profession don't maybe sort of, shout about the good work that we do. We often shout about the bad and everything else, but it's the good work we do that's really important.
It certainly is, Stu. Well, we'll leave that thought with our lovely conveyancing colleagues watching this, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.